Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome to the City County Liaison Committee meeting. Since we don't have a chair or vice chair, I will start that process asking for nominations for chair. So is there anyone out there who would like to run for chair, or is there anybody who would like to nominate somebody for chair? Mayor Bailey?
I'd like to nominate Richard Carpenter.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Bell? Are there any other nominations for chair? Councillor Carpenter, do you accept the nomination for chair?
I do, or thanks to my knowledge.
All those in favor? Carries. Did you want to run the election for the vice chair?
Yeah, we'll move on to election of vice chair. Is there anyone wish to stand for vice chair? Usually it's a member from the county, if there's a member from the city, so I'm looking at, I see Councillor Bell, is your hand up to accept the nomination for vice chair?
It is, yep.
Or anybody else that would like to run for vice chair? Seeing none, you do accept? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, I think we'll move on. Roll call has been taken. We have guests. We also have lunch here. Item for consideration of the Brantford City Council referral of item 7.1, which is the John Noble Committee Management Minutes, and that the Committee of Management authorized Chair McAlpine and Councillor Bell to review the John Noble Bell Court change orders 076, and then upon review of the John Noble Bell Court change orders 76.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Oh, sorry, any conflict of interest? Sorry, Councillor Sless, you have a conflict of interest.
I do, Mr. Chair. I have a family member employed by the John Noble Home.
Okay, I didn't see you on there. Thank you, Councillor Sless.
Okay.
And you will not vote or speak on the item. Okay, thank you. Okay, moving forward, this item from the floor then for consideration. It was brought up by the city, and the request for explanation is, how does this process, where we have a member of John Noble Home or the John Noble Committee authorizing a member to sign off on change orders? So anybody want to start this off? Mayor, Mayor David.
Yeah, I think to add to what you just said, Chair, and trying to decipher the discussion that occurred at the city council meeting. First of all, this was raised by Councillor Query.
Everyone's frozen up for me.
I'm going to concern was because it really was not fully explained, but I think the issue is seeing this giving to the chair and the vice chair the power to approve a change order in a project seemed kind of unusual. And unfortunately, when you read the minutes of the John Noble Home Committee of Management meeting, there's really no background information to explain it, what the issue was, the amount of money involved, and the reason for following this procedure and process. So I suspect it may be as simple as just more information.
Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah, Councilor Miller.
Just to be clear, it wasn't the chair and a member of the committee signing off on the change orders. They were reviewing it. I can be corrected if I'm wrong on that. And they were authorized, or they were given permission by the Committee of Management to review it, but upon review, then it would be signed off by the chair and the acting administrator. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear, that the chair and the member of the committee weren't signing off on the change order.
Yeah, and there was an authorization to authorize the chair and the acting administrator to sign off on the contract conversion as well. Yes, that's correct. Okay.
Yeah, so if I just chair, so I agree with you, Councillor Miller. It reads that way, but the problem is the minutes don't really tell us members of council, city council, what this was all about. What's involved here.
So I'm going to let Caitlin explain this.
I'll just jump in. I concur. There's a lot lacking as far as context goes, but I just wanted to be clear on that one point, because when I first read it, yeah, I thought, well, that's not really right that they do that, but they were just reviewing it. So, okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chair. So, great questions. And I mean, for those of you who I haven't not yet met, I'm a project manager with HDR, and I'm working on behalf of John Noble Home, supporting the Committee of Management. And I've also asked my colleague Jeff to join me here today. Jeff is a professional architect, and he's providing advisory services on the project. And going back to potentially our initial commentary there, Councillor Bell, I now understand your comment, because I understood that this would be part of the funding request process and not specifically the change order process. So I'm just going to pivot. So with respect to the approach of executing the change order, this change order specifically modifies the type of contract that John Noble Home has with the contractor. So when a contract is executed by John Noble Home, or at least has it's been to date on the project, that is signed both by the home administrator, and it's also been signed by councillors. And previously to date, I've seen signatures by Councillor Bell, signatures by Councillor Carpenter, and Councillor McAlpine. And to your point, Councillor Miller, the Committee of Management is not reviewing and processing the change order from any type of responsibility or with respect to change execution. That is all being done by your consultants in terms of validating the change request, working with the contractor to finalize pricing, and bringing forward the final ask. And the reason it was brought forward in this manner specifically is because we were trying to have the contract operate as a fixed price contract. So rather than the contract operate as a CCDC 5B, which is a construction manager contract, which allows the construction manager BDA to continue to bring forward changes, and then we process them throughout the project. We've now seen that that has obviously been a slippery slope to price escalation, and it's also been very hard to manage and push back work or scope or obligations to the contractor. And so when HDR joined the project last year, there had already been an accumulation of approximately 4 or 5 delay claims. That grew to 7 delay claims, and that were submitted from the contractor to the consultant group by the end of summer. So we're talking August 2024, we had this information in hand. And then we undertook approximately a 6-month process of negotiations. So on behalf of John Noble Home and the City and County and Committee of Management, your consultants, both HGR in an advisory and project management capacity, G Architects and Manticon, worked with BDA to go through and identify, we'll say itemize, quantify scopes of work, come to a shared agreement on the substantial completion date, showing leniency where the contractor incurred costs as a direct result of unforeseen or unknown conditions, and also require them to carry costs that they had previously captured in their base bid that were no longer being itemized in terms of they were covered in a cash allowance. So through that process, we came to an agreement on a final price, which the contractor showed concessions, and so did we. The contractor waived their overhead and profit cost, which was $750,000. So it would have been in addition to what we were looking to ask. And then what ended up happening was, with managing the overall home budget, the contingency we had available, and then the incremental ask from BDA with respect to, we'll say, executing the contract delay claim change order, that required an incremental ask of 1.6 million with respect to the 2025 funding request. And the change order process, because we were now converting from a 5B to managing the contract like a fixed price contract, we brought that forward to the Committee of Management first, rather than typically through change order process. It is recommended by the consultants, reviewed and approved by HDR, the home signs it, and then we pass it forward to councillors within the Committee of Management to sign as a secondary signing authority. But given the magnitude of this change, we didn't want to do that ahead of time. We wanted to bring that forward to the committee to talk through the implications both financially and from a schedule perspective and ensure that we were representing the committee's interests.
Thank you, Caitlin. Any questions of Caitlin? Third, Mayor Davis.
Yeah, through the chair to Caitlin, thanks for that explanation. My question to you would be, I mean, typically you'd be coming to the committee, you'd already have negotiated a stipulated price option agreement with a price. And then typically you're asking the committee of management to confirm that and confirm that, you know, that it's going over the budget amount. So why was this process followed, which doesn't really seem to give the committee of management the final decision, but leaves it to the chair and the vice chair to review it, and I assume then with the acting administrator, make some final decisions on something that could take the contract and the project substantially over budget.
So I can answer part of that, and then I see Councillor Bell raise his hand. I believe Councillor Bell, Carpenter, and McAlpine can also fill in potentially the other half of what I can't share. So with respect to approach, I would say that previously I had anticipated the incremental ask to be 2.5 million. I presented that to the committee both in November, December, and January. And at that same time, concurrently, I was still continuing to negotiate with our contractor, trying to land on a final number. We were in a position at that time as well that the contractor's general requirements had already expired. They expired at the end of November. So the contractor did not have general requirements available to bill. And when I say general requirements, we're talking anything related to bonding and insurance and site conditions, like all of their base bid framework, because we had modified the contract and increased the allocation of that line item for them to bill it going forward. So the contract had extended, the project schedule has extended 1 year. And so there, I mean, as we can anticipate right now, we're striving for a December 2025 completion. And so that had expired at the end of November. So we were expediting, continuing to finalize our negotiations and having the contractor bill the general requirements under the available allowance. They weren't able to increase their baseline for the general requirements until we converted the contract. The only other option we would have had is to piecemeal it into various change orders to give them a little bit of financial budget so that they could build that work. The other reason why we were trying to do it as one full package is the threat of tariffs that have been ongoing and the amount of materials that still need to be procured for the site and trying to push that risk to the contractor. We also needed to incentivize them. So the contractor was anticipating working until February of 2026. And we essentially said that that was not going to be acceptable and that they needed to find ways to contract the schedule to meet our demands in terms of occupancy and timelines, because it's critical that we have the ministry funding starting to flow so that John Noble Home can begin the debenture payments back to the city and the county. So as part of that, we actually had them advance and contract the schedule by 4 months. So these pieces all had to happen concurrently in that they were interlinked, and there was dependencies there, but there was also various motivations for us and various motivations for them. So the ongoing communication to the council happened over a several month period. It was not just brought forward in February asking for approval and then delegated to a couple of representatives to take offline. At the meeting, it was discussed and agreed to that all parties, with the information that was shared, it was supported. It was just finalizing that with a call with the contractor, and the representatives that were identified as delegates were extremely familiar with the project and had the trust of their colleagues. And so that was what was agreed to at that time. So that's the side of it that I can share with you. And then I look to the councillors to provide further input. Councillor Bell? Or sorry, Chair?
Mayor Davis.
Yeah, so Caitlin, has the change order been signed?
Yes, it has been.
So this is all kind of moot.
Yeah.
Right?
But I understood you're looking for clarity around the process and what had happened.
Okay, and so on February the 12th, when this was dealt with by the Committee of Management, Did the support staff, did they know at that time that the stipulated price option contract was going to be $1.6 million more than what was originally budgeted? Did
It's,
you already have that number?
when you say stipulated price contract, I'm gonna share my screen for just 1 second so I can show just the budget page, because I think it'll give a lot of clarity. I'm just
Okay.
gonna share for a second. Oops. Right here. So what you're referring to specifically is our Belcourt construction contract, which is this section here. And I'm confirming that everyone can see, just someone to confirm, nod. Yes, okay. And so you can actually see that the cost associated with the contractor's contract is within the project budget limits. The home has miscellaneous owner costs, which are required to support the project, which still need to be ordered. And those are on my next slide here. Here's a variety of items. These are all the responsibility of the home to provide. And then this is why we were coming forward to ensure that we had the 2025 funding request in order for them to be able to execute the change, well, not change order, sorry, the vendor agreements, which need to go out for these products. So that includes anything related to furniture, fixtures, and equipment in terms of the common area lounges, bedpan washers, and then base building integration systems. So nurse call, BAS, door security. And so with respect to the budget, we were trying to be mindful of the fact that we can execute the change order within the project budget, but we require a 2025 funding request to support the overall project budget so that the home can still continue to procure the required FF&E to occupy the spaces upon occupancy. And if I scroll up here for 1 second, this is a summary of all the funding contributions on the project. The city and county's contributions are this section here, number 4. The upper sections represent contributions from the Ministry of Long-Term Care, an insurance claim that John Noble Home received, and then contributions from Ontario Health for the sprinkler project. So the total capital contributions, including our 2025 funding request, brings the total project budget to $29.9 million. Of that total project budget, the ministry will be flowing $14.8 million upon occupancy. The dollars will begin to flow. Well, they're calculated on a monthly basis, whether the ministry flows them monthly or quarterly. But the intention is that ideally by spring of 2026, the ministry funding will begin to flow to John Noble Home to be able to be paid back to the city and the county. So that this will offset the total project costs. There were also contributions that were outside the city and the county. So the Ministry of Long-Term Care provided a planning grant, a construction grant, and then there will also be a development grant. This remaining $996,900 won't be flowed from the ministry until we hit substantial performance. And with respect to the sprinkler project was executed concurrently to the Belcourt construction project, and the consultant services were delivered at no cost for the sprinkler project to ensure continuity. And it was also essentially embedded as part of this project, but it was treated as a completely separate project and managed as such. And the sprinkler project also had a deficit of almost $300,000 required to complete the sprinkler project. So that money was being managed within the Belcourt budget. So I guess to answer your question, the intent was that we're trying to be respectful and mindful of the total capital contributions required to complete the project. The execution of that one individual change order wasn't exceeding the capital contributions in terms of committed agreements. However, the home requires the county support in order to be able to continue to finalize the vendor agreements for occupancy.
County and city.
County and city.
Councillor
Sorry,
Bell.
just because I'm speaking to the county.
Yeah, Councillor Bell. Thank you, Caitlin.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
We think about that.
Something that, even if I just wanted to clarify something that,
Oh, we can barely hear you.
Can't hear
We
you.
can barely hear you.
that's any better?
That's better.
Yeah, I just want to clarify something Mayor Davies said. I'm not the vice chair of the committee.
No.
I offered my services as a long-term project management experienced person. I've been involved in this project right from the beginning. And in fact, through my advocacy and the support of the rest of the board, we brought HDR on to help us in project management. Just to reflect on this is a $30 million project. The John Noble Home does not have people with the skills to manage a $30 million project. And that became quite apparent quite early. And I've just got to compliment HDR and what they've done to support this project. And this particular exercise of determining the revision to the contract has saved us a lot of money through their efforts. And I do applaud them for that. But my understanding of this meeting was not to talk about that specifically. It was to talk about the process, the internal process of who can sign what and when. And I think I understand that Caitlin and her colleagues are coming to the city to explain the need for an additional 1.6 million. They're certainly coming to the county. They're coming tomorrow night to talk to us for our share of that. So I think we just need to reflect on particularly what we're talking about in this meeting and not get deflected.
Okay, and they've already been to the event. Okay, any further comments on this item? Oh, Councillor Miller, I see your hand up.
Yeah,
Go ahead. You have the floor.
Mr. Chair, yeah, I appreciate that. What I've heard and what I've learned since I've been digging into this, since this meeting was on and what Caitlin presented today, there's a lot of background to that whole motion that come forward. And I can't blame Councillor McCreary for saying, I'm not in agreement with what's going on, because it wasn't clear when I read that motion that there's a whole lot of other things swirling in the background. One, okay, sure. I don't think it's in dispute that the committee management can do change orders, or even change that contract type to specific costs. But at the same time, there should have been something saying about, and if there are additional costs, and maybe that's an in-camera item, I don't know, but if there are additional costs, it has to go back to the respective council. So I'm just saying, I'm very confused reading the motion and hearing all the stuff today. It's a lot clearer to me today, but when just reading the minutes, the motion, it wasn't clear to me before. So it's a lot clearer to me now.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Further comments? This is an item for consideration, but there's nothing here for us to pass, is there?
Through the chair, so the minutes are, the recommendation from the minutes is what's for consideration right now.
Just 6.1.
5.1, the referral that the committee management authorized Chair McAlpine and Councillor Bell to review John Noble Home Board change order, and that upon review, authorize the chair and acting administrator to sign contract and stipulate prices.
Why would this committee be approving something that John Noble Board has already approved?
Well,
Well, this because they're in disagreement with it?
Yeah, so through the chair, under our shared services agreement, so any decisions that John Noble Home requires council to make goes on a city council agenda as in the form of their minutes. Council approves the minutes. By approving the minutes, you are approving the decisions of John Noble
No,
Home.
we received the minutes.
Yes,
You don't approve.
you adopt them or approve them because that's the decision making.
Okay,
And so that's why we're
The
here.
problem is, I think there's a bit of misdirection there. Is that the John Noble Home is a separate entity owned by the county and the city, and you give delegated authority for that decision-making process to the committee chairs or committee of management. And then the part that sort of separates, so we'll just say, when it comes to the financial, as long as we're working within the budget, we have the right to make those decisions. So the county and the city don't approve any of the decisions that we make outside of financial decisions, is kind of my understanding.
yeah, but what's before us, as I understand it, is that there was a confusion about what that meant. And so it's before us so that we get clarification on what it was meant, and we just approve it going forward. So is that how you're reading it?
Yeah.
Okay, so motion to approve 5.1. Councillor Oakley, seconded by, I say Councillor Bell. Okay. All those in favor?
Well, hang on, is there any discussion?
Okay. You got a question?
I got something to say. Guess that won't surprise you. So I'm looking at the agreement that between the city and the county from signed December 19th, 2017, that talks about how you handle these kinds of issues. And I think Councillor Miller described exactly what I believe was probably in the mind of Councillor McCreary when he read the minutes that they came to council for, approval as part of our minutes package with really no explanation what this was about. And I think they were legitimate concerns and questions that Councillor McCreary had. And at that time, we didn't know that there was going to be a presentation to our finance committee about, and it's the same thing, right? Yeah, okay. So if I read section 8 of the agreement, it says that in the event councils are unable to agree upon the manner in which any of the joint powers, responsibilities, and authorities are exercised in respect of the home, the disagreement should come to this committee, and then there's a whole procedure and process. So I think the issue is not approval of these minutes. The issue is the decision. And is this a right and proper decision? And is it a decision supported by the city of Brantford? But I think that decision by the council, now I have the proper context and circumstances, is probably tomorrow night at council. And when the council receives our finance committee report, and if there are any concerns that council members have, they can refer that decision back to this committee. And so if we're dealing with just the minutes of the John Noble Home Committee of Management meeting minutes, I agree that makes sense to approve recommendations from this committee to both city and county to go ahead and approve the minutes. But that should not be taken as an indication that I'm content with the decision that was made.
No, we're just approving these minutes.
Yeah, these minutes.
The minutes that brought us here in the first place.
Yep.
Any other things, in its own context? Okay, so I'll call it, all those in favor? Carried. 6.1 is the minutes from January 18, 2021. No one was there, but we still need to move them and to receive in second. Moved by Councillor Miller, seconded by Councillor Oakley. All those in favor of the minutes?
I was there, Mr. Chair.
Yes, and I was there too, so there was 2 of us there. Okay, and there's no notice of motion, no resolution, so we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Still been to school.
Sorry, I was there.
I think I was there.